Good morning and welcome to the Core Connection. I'm Mira Rubin here with you on Enlightened World Network, and today's topic is dominoes. And what we're talking about today is how sometimes when we connect with a core issue and start unraveling that, it feels like everything around it is sort of falling apart and is disrupted. And it's interesting. It's an interesting dynamic. We get to talk about that this morning, to be looking at how things often fall apart before they get better. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. Good morning, Rosalind. Great to have you here with us this morning. Welcome, welcome. So before we get started, let's take a minute or two to get present. So let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine clean, crisp oxygen flooding your lungs, flowing into your bloodstream, nourishing all your cells and your organs, and bringing vital life energy to your body and being. And as you exhale, exhale any tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. This time, imagine brilliant, bright light lighting you up from the inside out, illuminating, electrifying, and energizing all your cells, all your molecules, all your electrons, and lighting you up from the inside out so that you create this brilliant beam of light out into the world. And as you exhale, exhale any remaining tension, stress, negativity, and fatigue. And now let's just gently press our palms together. And softly, softly, softly rub your fingers against your palms to feel the deliciousness, to connect with the sensation, to allow yourselves to really become present right here, right now, into this remarkable physical form that enables you to experience life. So welcome. Let's talk. I've been seeing this pattern with clients as well as with myself, that when we key into a foundational issue, like when we get fortunate enough to get a core issue and we start disentangling that core issue, disassembling it, all kinds of other things start popping up. And there's a period of let's say a period of disenchantment, perhaps, because rather than feeling like we're triumphing over our challenges, it feels more like we get barraged with more challenges, with more unsettling experience, more disruptive feelings. And so in this case, I can say that pretty reliably, things tend to get worse before they get better when we're really dealing with foundational issues. And the reason for that is that when we get to think of the words, a foundational issue, when we get to a foundational issue and we pull that apart, what's happening is the whole structure, the integrity of the structure is then violated or disrupted. And so now the structure is not as solid as it was, and it just starts crumbling. And so with that crumbling, there's a lot of disorientation and discomfort and disruption. So it feels very disruptive and uncomfortable to be having to reevaluate and reassess our relationship to things that used to be unquestioned, that things become visible that hadn't previously been visible. And that creates discomfort because we need to recalibrate, we need to readjust, we need to reevaluate. It's really a big deal. And it is the path to freedom and to health, to go through that and come to a new integration of new values, new patterns, new perspectives. So Rosalind says, water wars. The governor made a proclamation for the state of California as part of the drought response, a pause on drilling new wells or making existing ones deeper, exemption for small private property with no business activity. Well, Rosalind, I really don't know how that fits in with our topic, but you've pressed a bunch of my buttons about water. So I think I'm going to follow your cue. First, welcome, Natalie. Good afternoon from Switzerland. How wonderful to have you here joining us. So the topic is dominoes and how there's often a feeling of crumbling as we address foundational issues. And I think this is really important because of what we're all facing, in the world and also within ourselves. Good morning, Kimberly. Welcome. So, but I do want to address this thing that Rosalind brought up, water wars. And I'm delighted that there's a pause on drilling new wells. That's a great thing, I think. Also, maybe what they can do is put a pause on these companies that are taking the water from the public aquifers and thereby creating a shortage for people, for the public. So like Nestle pulling all kinds of water from public aquifers and paying a nominal price to create shortages for a vast number of people in order to go and sell their bottled water that's polluting because of the plastic. It's just craziness. Anyway, so Rosalind says, falling apart to come together. Path forward will rely on neighboring cities to provide emergency supply. So here's the thing. This whole thing about water scarcity and water wars can be avoided. And I highly recommend that you go check out waterstories.com. waterstories.com. And I know I've mentioned it before, but this is the most hopeful path that I have encountered to reverse climate change, to reverse the path of desertification that we've been creating on the planet, to create Eden out of deserts. That we have a path forward to resolve all of these issues by working in concert with nature to restore the water cycle. And you must go check it out. It's super powerful. And in order to implement these interventions, it's going to require that we change some of the laws. And it's really important for everybody to know that there's a big movement to privatize water. And in fact, states often own water rights. So any water that falls from the sky or that's under the earth, in many places, the states own the rights to that and can mismanage it and misdirect it. And it's in many states illegal to collect water on your property from the rain, for instance, that it's not yours to be able to collect. And so there's a lot that gets to change in order for us to be able to create a verdant place for us all to be living, and to break this cycle of fire, drought, and flood that we are having, and mudslides and all of that. And by restoring the water cycle, it remedies all of that and refills the aquifers and just resolves so many of these issues. So in the face of that kind of drought is probably a good time to be approaching government to be shifting the laws in order to support the remediations that are going to rectify these conditions. So anyway, that's a big aside. And I get the falling apart to come together. That we're seeing it all around us, that the systems are falling apart and are really calling for something new, for something that is going to be more functional, for something that's going to be life affirming. So back to this notion of sort of keystone issues. We can also think of these keystone issues as like core wounds, or, you know, like each of us comes to this life with a theme, kind of, maybe not just one theme, maybe multiple themes for what we're up in life, you know, like what our issues are to be healed, for instance, you know, what we're here to transform. And this goes maybe even, it may go hand in hand with our purpose, or it may go side by side with our purpose. But there are themes, you know, so maybe a foundational theme might be belonging, you know, or a foundational theme might be being a protector. So, so Robin says, good morning. Say a prayer for Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama. We have some really rough weather brewing for afternoon storms and tornadoes. So let's all just take a moment to imagine clear skies, gentle breezes. Let's just imagine the calming of these violent weather patterns. That's another thing about water stories. By healing the water cycle, we actually are healing weather patterns and gentling those weather patterns. So let's just project peace and ease, and hopefully we can calm those storms with our intention and attention. It's so interesting how when we're experiencing well, there's so many thoughts. Sorry about that. It's like my head's going all over the place, but I do want to get back to talking about this period of disruption. And, you know, we can be looking at this as real storms, because we're seeing that in our world quite a lot. And we can also be looking at it as our own psychic storms too. And that's really what I'm talking about. So this was really interesting with a client. So just to respond to Robin, you're getting lots of love here. Rosalind says for prayers for the storm to pass with ease. And Kimberly is saying lifting up positive vibes and prayers your way. And so Rosalind was saying, what are the core patterns? Not belonging, lack, protector. Exactly. So I'm going to give you an example of this protector thing, because this is really interesting. And this person is so insightful and shared so many of their insights. So I'm just going to share it because it was brilliant. And good morning, Sally. Welcome. So great to have you here with us this morning. So we're talking about the untangling and the often discomfort that occurs when we get to a core issue and then everything else starts unraveling. and how uncomfortable that can be as we get to a place of reconstructing ourselves. So this person had a core issue of being a protector. Now, if you're a protector, and we've talked about polarities before, if you're a protector, there needs to be something to protect against, right? And so this person's insight, I was just so impressed that there was protecting against evil, you know, and then evil was seen in so many places that hadn't been conscious, you know, that are contradictory to what we would imagine. So for instance, there was an exaggeration of experience, like when you're okay, so when you're viewing the world from the place of protector, it's an aggressive stance, right? Protector is oppositional. It's defining by necessity something to protect against, something to defend against, right? And so everything was a potential enemy. Everything was a potential threat. And so interestingly enough, the drive for this person is unity, which makes total sense, right? I mean, as someone who is evolving with a spiritual intent, the intention would be unity. And yet here, this protector, which sounds superficially like it would be a really positive thing, it was in fact creating all kinds of polarity and opposition to the very thing that was the foundational intention, which was unity. So protector, defender, you know, then what is the other side of that is threat, opposition, evil. When we're a crusader for good, for instance, that is by its nature requiring that there be not good, right? And so there's a polarity or a level of awareness that is this polarity, and then there's another level of awareness that sees the union and the interaction of all of it. And that's a whole different place from which to interact when the whole picture is the whole picture, rather than this black and white kind of oppositional thing, because those two parts are part of something bigger, right? Anyway, what was interesting is that this person also experienced all of these repercussions. It's almost like when there's an earthquake, you know how there are aftershocks that occur elsewhere. And I think that that's really what happens pretty reliably when we get down to doing really deep and core type work. That when we address and start clearing a core pattern, it is like an earthquake. It's disrupting the whole structure. And then there are these aftershocks that ripple out from that epicenter, and oftentimes in ways that we don't even recognize. So for instance, dealing with a core issue, it brings that issue to consciousness. And when that issue is part of consciousness, we start seeing it more and more. So it looks like things are getting worse. It might feel like things are getting worse because we have an expanded awareness around something, right? We have an expanded awareness about that experience. So it's on our radar. It's kind of like when you buy a certain kind of car, you see them all over the place on the road, right? So as our consciousness becomes tuned, we are more and more present to those experiences. So Sally says, oh my, great conversation. I just went through something like this, through unraveling some tangled up cords, and there was a massive life lesson that I had thought I was good with. Trust. Found out I'm not so good with trust. Well, it may be that you've just gone even deeper, because these things live on different dimensions, Sally. That's my experience, is that, you know, we handle something and then the next time it comes around, we're seeing it from a different vantage point, and we've gained enough strength and integrity, hopefully, to deal with the deeper issue. So found out I'm not so good with trust. I have since moved past it, and great things are being restored within my life. That's awesome to hear. I'm also one who thought that I was here to defend others from their own darkness. And I've since realized that I cannot do that. That's not fair to myself, and that's not fair to that person as well, because they're not doing the actual work, which limits their growth. And actually, in that concept of defending others from their own darkness, it's an affirmation of their darkness rather than supporting others in experiencing their light, right? Or expanding into their light. And again, there's even a polarity within that. But good for you, Sally, to have had this recognition, you know, that there's something that's still running you on some level, and to be willing to be looking at all the different nooks and crannies that are part of this exploration as we become more aware. So with another client, they've experienced tremendous trauma as a child. And when we started, we cleared a lot of, you know, whatever the surface stuff was that was in the way, and have been doing phenomenal work, creating deeper and deeper integration, and issues around that trauma from childhood just re-arose. And my thinking about that is that the reason that it came now to be able to do the deeper work is that this person now has greater integrity, is more integrated within themselves, is stronger, is strong enough to be able to truly address that trauma. So it's interesting, because we often have a reluctance to change, right? Or to transformation. We want to hold on to what's familiar, even if it's awful, at least it's familiar, right? We know what to expect. And then when we start unraveling things, it often feels like more and more is crumbling, more and more is just collapsing. And it is because so much of that construct that we had for our lives was built on this faulty foundation. So if we start pulling things out from the foundation, of course things are going to crumble, right? And so I think that this evolutionary growth kind of thing, it happens in phases. So initially, maybe we clear off stuff from the top so that when we pull out something from the foundation, there's not quite as much to fall. And or we build up the other parts of the foundation that are solid. We strengthen them so that when we remove another part of the foundation, not everything crumbles. Just, you know, we're disentangling all these things through a process that is incremental. It is incremental, or you could think of it almost like quantum energy, where it's dimensional, you know, like we get past a certain phase of the lower energy and that gets resolved, then we jump up to the next level, and then we get to work on that structure from that next level of evolution. Anyway, I just want to assure you that if things seem to get worse before they get better, that's really normal and to kind of be expected. It's not necessarily a bad thing. What makes it feel bad, particularly, is our resistance to it and wanting it to be different instead of rolling with it and allowing ourselves to experience that transformation with as much grace as possible. You know, it does feel like the world's falling down sometimes, and it needs to, so that we can reconstruct it. And maybe to loop back to what Rosalind was talking about with the water, that may be the case with that as well. Like lots of our structures and systems need to recognize that they are untenable and need to be reconstructed. So Lisa says, as I've gone through my awakening, I've learned to shut off a lot of negative thoughts. If something from my youth that was painful comes up, I stop right in the thought and tell myself, stop, you're done with that. Surprisingly, it's a great tool. Who would think it? Well, congratulations, Lisa, if it works. And there may be a time where there's something there that is yet to be healed, that you get to heal. If and when. So there may be a time where that voice needs to be heard and addressed, and that there may be greater freedom on the other side of it, just as a possibility. And Rosalind says, do you remember defrag function on your computer desktop, watching the image pixels rearrange? I love it. That's exactly what's happening. That's what's happening. Lisa, congratulations. It's moving day. I've been crying all night. I hate goodbyes. So how about orienting yourself to hellos? And maybe instead of goodbye, maybe till later, or see you soon, or, you know, creating those possibilities. And all endings also are new beginnings, and I know you know that. So I wish you great success and ease and joy in your new home, and that it's everything you dreamt of and more, Lisa. And so Kimberly says, this is hitting home. I had to move and had not been really happy where I was living. Came to live with my aunt. She's dying of alcoholism. Wow, that's tough. This has been so hard on my soul. I love her so much. Some days I feel like I'm losing my mind, learning to handle my emotions the best I can. I love this space. Kimberly, so much. Boy, there's so much in that. And I just wish you ease and grace, and for your aunt as well, and forgiveness and all of that. So that's it for this morning. I've got to run. I'm Mira Rubin. This is the Core Connection. I go live here on the Enlightened World Facebook page, Enlightened World Network Facebook page each weekday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern. And I am just so grateful to be spending this time with you, and for your incredible wisdom and engagement. So much love to you. Till next time.